Good evening. Thank you for joining us for tonight's story. We are reading a short story from the book Chinese Myths and Legends. This is the story of the Man in the Moon. Long ago, there was a village in China by the banks of the Yellow River. It was a very poor village, and everyone who lived there was always on the verge of starvation, because floods from the river would devastate the crops. One year the famine was particularly bad, because the river had flooded 3 times, and no one had enough to eat. During this time of privation, a little boy from the village was working in his family's field one day, when he spotted a tiny sparrow with a broken wing hopping around on the ground. He approached the sparrow slowly and picked it up. It shook uncontrollably, and its tiny heart was racing. "Please don't be afraid. I will not harm you. I am only trying to help," he said soothingly. The sparrow seemed to calm down at the little boy's kind words. The boy took the sparrow home and carefully bound its wing. Then he put it in a cage and fed it food with his own hands from his meager meals until its wing healed. When the sparrow was well again, the boy opened the cage door and let it fly free. "Goodbye, little bird. May you fly strongly until the end of your days," he called after it, waving and smiling. Later that day, as he was at work in the field again, a sparrow flew fearlessly up to him and landed at his feet. "Why, you look just like the little bird I just rescued. Could it be that you're the same sparrow?" he asked wonderingly. The sparrow did not reply, but dropped a tiny seed at the little boy's feet. The boy picked up the seed and examined it, but finding it of no value, he threw it away. The sparrow flew after the seed and again deposited it at his feet. Again he threw it away, and again the sparrow retrieved it. This happened 3 times. Amazed, he asked, "Little sparrow, why do you persist in giving me this seed? Is it that you want me to plant it?" The sparrow actually seemed to nod. Deep in thought, the little boy pocketed the seed. Apparently satisfied, the sparrow flew away. Later that day, he told his parents what had happened. His mother said, "Son, perhaps the sparrow you rescued is an immortal in disguise. He has rewarded your thoughtfulness with this seed. You must plant it so as not to anger the immortal." His father agreed, saying, "Yes, you must plant it in the garden behind our hut. Nurture the shoot that will sprout from the seed, as lovingly as you cared for that bird that brought you this gift." The little boy did as his parents said. Every day before he went to the fields, he watered the tiny sprout, and it soon grew into a mighty vine with branches as thick as his leg. Strangely enough, the plant did not yield one single fruit. He asked his parents, "Should I continue to nurture this plant? It has not borne any fruit and is choking all the other plants in the garden to death." His father agreed. "Yes, it seems to be a waste of time. Maybe you should kill the plant. Then we can dry it out and use it as fuel in our stove." The mother disagreed. "Son, you will anger the gods if you do not care for this plant. We will wait until the end of summer. If it still has not yielded any fruit, we can destroy it then." The family agreed that this was a reasonable solution, even though it had dire consequences on their small income from selling the produce from their garden. Months passed, and the boy faithfully watered the plant every day. Finally, just as the family was deciding to kill it, the plant bore a single, tiny, green gourd. The gourd rapidly grew, bigger and more golden every day, until it was as large as the little boy himself. The family then decided to harvest it. "What a lot of soup this fine fruit will make! We could feed the whole family for months on its bounty," his parents rejoiced. The little boy took his axe and went into the garden. He chopped the gourd from the vine and then cut into the fruit. Immediately, a shower of gold and precious gems spilled out. The immense gourd contained enough riches to ensure the family's fortune for generations. "We are rich, rich beyond our wildest dreams," the family rejoiced. Their happiness was so great that they cried with joy. They took their treasure and headed for the capital, where they bought a fine mansion and lived together in prosperity and comfort. By this time, the entire village had heard the story of the miraculous gourd and the kind-hearted little boy. Most people were happy for the family, for they were good people and never begrudged anyone in need. One little boy, however, was very unhappy whenever he heard the story. His name was Wu Gan. "Why did that sniveling little brat come into such a fortune? We are starving and have to work for supper from sunup until sundown in the fields, mucking around in the mud, and we can't even eat a decent meal after all that toil. I never could stand that do-good little snob. Why should he have it so easy?" Wu Gan thought to himself. He nurtured his envy until it turned into great hatred for the newly rich family. His discontent grew until he could not even sleep well at night. One day, as Wu Gan was out working in the fields, he spotted a sparrow in a tree not far from him. He picked up a rock and threw it half-heartedly at the sparrow, but he missed. It was then that he came up with a plan. He immediately dropped his hoe and raced off. "Where do you think you're going? Come back immediately. You're not done harvesting your portion of the field," his father yelled after him. Wu Gan ignored him and quickly ran home, where he immediately set up a small paper lantern in a tree. Every day he would practice throwing rocks at the lantern. His parents berated him for his strange new hobby. "Why don't you help us any more in the fields? We need you to help us with the harvest. Without your help, we'll starve," his mother admonished him. "So what? We're already starving," retorted Wu Gan. "How will your throwing rocks at a paper lantern help the family?" his father asked angrily. "Hard work is the surest way to riches." Wu Gan replied smugly, "We've worked like slaves our entire lives, and it's gotten us nothing. I have a plan. When the time comes, you'll understand everything." His parents saw that they could not dissuade him, and left him alone. After about a month, Wu Gan could hit the paper lantern with a rock every time on the first try. He then picked up his hat and headed for the fields. Soon he spotted a sparrow. He picked up a rock nearby and threw it at the sparrow. It fell from the tree at once. Wu Gan ran up to the little bird and saw that he had broken its wing. "Perfect," he exulted. He took the sparrow home and tended it as carefully as the other little boy had. In time, the poor bird healed. Wu Gan said to it, "I have nursed you back to health. You must bring me a reward. If you don't, I'll throw more rocks at every sparrow I see and leave them to die. Chances are, you'll be one of those birds." He then opened the door of the cage, and the sparrow quickly flew out. Later that day, just as Wu Gan had planned, the sparrow reappeared. It landed at his feet, where it dropped a large, round seed. "If I plant this, will I be rewarded with great riches?" asked Wu Gan. The sparrow seemed to wink and flew away. Like the other little boy, Wu Gan planted the seed in the family garden and tended the little sprout until it grew into a mighty vine. In time, it also bore a single gourd that grew as huge as the first one. It had exactly the same rich, golden color as the other gourd. The family was ecstatic. "Let's harvest it tomorrow," the father decided. "Yes, and then we will be so rich we won't know how to spend the money," his mother gloated. "And we'll never have to see this miserable village again," added Wu Gan. That night, Wu Gan was hard-pressed to fall asleep. He kept thinking about the fine new mansion, clothes, and grand carriage he would buy with the money, as well as the countless servants he would hire to wait on him. However, the thought that he had to share his wealth with his family rankled him. "I won't give any to the family," he thought. "After all, they complained incessantly and never lifted a finger to help. I'll get up in a couple of hours before the sun comes up and reap my harvest. I could make it to the capital by sundown," he decided. Just as he was thinking this, sleep overcame him, and he dreamed about an old man with a beautiful white beard and flowing white hair. The old man had a huge jar of sweets, but the opening of the jar was very small. "You may help yourself to a treat, but only one," he said to Wugan. Wugan's eyes opened as big as saucers at this windfall. He reached his hand deep into the jar and grabbed as many sweets as his hand could hold. Unfortunately, when he tried to withdraw his fist from the jar, the opening wasn't big enough. The only way he could remove his hand was to let go of all the treats he had grabbed, except one. This he was not willing to do. He stubbornly tried to pull his fist of treats out again and again, panting and desperate. "Cruel and foolish boy, your greed will get you nothing," said the old man in disgust. With these words, both the old man and the jar full of sweets disappeared. Wugan awoke, bathed in sweat. He thought, "If I go into the garden now and cut the gourd open, I can grab all the riches and be in the city before the family wakes up and keep it all to myself. How lucky it was that that horrible dream awakened me in time." He took his bag and an axe and sneaked into the garden soundlessly. His hands were trembling with excitement as he took the axe to the gourd. He hacked and hacked, but no jewels or gold came pouring out. Finally, the gourd split open, and an old man emerged. Wugan rubbed his eyes in disbelief, for it seemed to be the same old man who had visited him in his dream. Fear sent an icy chill down Wugan's back, and his hair stood on end. He cowered before the majestic old man, faint with fear. "I have come to give you your reward," said the old man. At these words, Wugan's fear evaporated. He straightened up and said, "It's about time. What's it going to be? Gold? Jewels? Come on, hurry up. I've waited forever." "I will show you riches no mortal has ever dreamed of," replied the old man. "Grab your axe and bag and take hold of my hand." Boldly, Wugan stepped forward and did as he was told. As soon as he took the old man's hand, they began ascending into the air. Higher and higher they flew, until Wugan's breath failed him. He was again filled with fear. "Where are we going, old man?" He managed to speak out. "We are going to the moon," was the reply. After a while they had indeed reached the moon. Wugan saw that here all the mountains and trees were made out of silver. He couldn't believe his eyes. He also saw a beautiful lady wandering about, but he did not want to stop and talk to her. All he wanted was to receive his treasure and get back to Earth. He immediately ran up to a massive silver boulder and began hacking at it with his axe, trying to break off a piece. "Stop that!" barked the old man irritably. "I have something much better to show you. Follow me," said the old man. Wugan eagerly obeyed. They walked for a few minutes, and they reached a magnificent tree. Its trunk was of precious, polished cassia wood, and each leaf was exquisitely sculpted of the finest deep green jade. The tree also bore a dazzling array of fruits of every color, each one a perfect gem of enormous size. There were sparkling diamonds, sapphires, pearls, rubies, and fire opals. The tree was so splendid that it glowed with its own light. At the sight of this unearthly beauty, Wugan's pulse quickened, and the blood rushed through his veins. He barely heard the old man say, "This is your reward." "What did you say? You mean I can't have it?" Wugan couldn't believe his ears. "If you can chop this tree down with your axe, it is yours. You can put it in your bag, and I will take you back to the human realm," chuckled the old man. Wugan didn't like the twinkle of mischief in the old man's eye, but he turned back to look at the magnificent tree, and all other thoughts fled. He purposefully approached the tree with his axe and took a mighty swing at the base of its trunk. Almost immediately, the cut he had made healed over. Wu Gan was flabbergasted. He dropped his axe and bent it down to examine the tree trunk. It looked as sound as ever. He ran his hand over the place where the cut should have been. It was as good as new. There was not even a small nick in the polished, gleaming wood. Wu Gan began frantically hacking away at the tree at a furious pace. Wood chips flew everywhere. How each cut he made immediately healed over, and he got nowhere. He tried to shake the tree to dislodge the precious jewels, but they were securely attached to the tree. Try as he might, he could not even pluck the smallest of the jewels from the tree. The old man looked on with a sardonic smile, not saying a word. Wu Gan took up his axe and again tried desperately to chop the tree. Finally the old man spoke. "Greedy boy, you will never be able to chop down this tree. It is your punishment to stay here until you can control your greed. Only then can you return to the human world and resume your life." Wu Gan was so preoccupied that he did not hear these words or see the old man disappear into thin air. He had eyes only for the tree trunk and ears only for the rhythmic sound of his axe as it bit into the rich red wood. Wu Gan stayed by the tree all night at his futile task. In the morning, the beautiful woman he had seen approached him. "Oh, thank goodness you are here. I am Tsang-O. I have been stranded here alone for longer than I can remember. I used to live on earth like you. I am so very lonely. Please, please, put down your axe and talk to me," she pleaded with tears in her lovely eyes. Wu Gan didn't even lift his eyes from his task, despite the woman's breathtaking beauty. It was as if he was dead to all else and could only concentrate on the tree. Hesitantly but desperately, Tsang-O took hold of Wu Gan's sleeve. Wu Gan turned toward her for the first time. Enraged, he roared, "Leave me alone! Can't you see I am trying to cut down this tree? I have to cut it down so I can be rich. I'll be richer than the emperor. It is my reward." Suddenly, Wu Gan's eyes narrowed, and an ugly suspicion entered his head. "Did you hear me? Go away! You can't have any. It's all mine." He approached her menacingly, wielding his axe. Terrified, Tsang-O ran away. Wu Gan immediately turned back to his exhausting task. "You can't chop down that tree. It's magic," Tsang-O called to him from a safe distance. "Why don't you put down your axe and we can keep each other company? We are the only two people in this forsaken place," she wailed. Wu Gan did not hear her. Tsang-O finally gave up and wandered sadly away on her own across the cold silver landscape. As time passed, Wu Gan began to age, but he is doomed never to die. He has been thousands of years since Wu Gan's adventure. It has been thousands of years since Wu Gan's adventure began. The Chinese believe that Wu Gan is still there, hacking away at the magic tree. A wizened old man now, with a snow-white beard. On a clear night, when the full moon is out, perhaps you can see him swinging away. The Man in the Moon. That is a story retold by Shelley Fu. Thank you so much for listening. Good night, everybody.